There are legends passed down for generations that most people now see as nothing more than frightening stories. Yet some of them continue to appear in different places, even today. Names change, countries change, but descriptions of certain creatures remain strangely similar. Today, I will tell you about 3 of them. The first story takes us into the frozen forests of northern Canada, where winter can bury roads beneath snow and the nearest town may be many miles away. Local hunters told stories about a creature known as the Frost Wanderer. According to legend, it appeared only during the coldest nights, usually near isolated cabins and abandoned roads. In January 1996, 2 brothers, Michael and Thomas, traveled to an old hunting cabin deep in the forest. They knew the area well and planned to stay for 3 days. Their first evening passed quietly, but around 2 in the morning, Michael woke to the sound of footsteps outside. At first, he blamed the wind, but the sound was too regular. One step, then silence, then another. He woke Thomas, who took a flashlight and looked through the window. Snow covered the forest, but nobody was there. Minutes later, the footsteps stopped. The next morning, the brothers found strange tracks surrounding the cabin. They looked human, but were much longer than normal footprints. The tracks began near the forest, circled the cabin several times, and ended directly beneath the window where Thomas had been standing. There were no tracks leading away. Michael searched for an explanation, but Thomas wanted to leave immediately. Michael convinced him to stay one final night. Before sunset, they locked the doors, covered the windows, and promised each other that no matter what happened, neither of them would go outside. That evening, a heavy snowstorm arrived. The brothers had no idea that whatever had visited them the previous night was already returning. Around 1 in the morning, the cabin generator suddenly stopped and everything went dark. A few minutes later, the brothers heard footsteps through the storm. This time they were coming directly toward the front door. Then they stopped. 3 knocks sounded against the wood. Neither brother moved. After several seconds, the knocks came again. Thomas slowly approached the window and looked outside. A tall, pale figure stood in the snow. It was unnaturally thin, with long arms and a body that almost disappeared against the storm. Its face was hidden, but Thomas knew it was watching him. The figure tilted its head and stepped toward the window. Thomas jumped back, and the brothers pushed a table against the door. For hours, the footsteps moved around the cabin. Sometimes they stopped beside a window, as if the creature was waiting. Around 4 in the morning, something slowly dragged across the outside of the door. Then everything became silent. At sunrise, the brothers left and returned to the settlement. An old hunter listened to their story and asked one question: "Did you open the door?" When Michael said no, the hunter told them they were lucky. According to local legend, the Frost Wanderer cannot enter a home unless someone allows it inside. It knocks and waits for curiosity or fear to make someone open the door. A year later, Michael returned with several hunters. They found 3 long marks on the outside of the cabin door, but no footprints anywhere in the fresh snow. The next story takes us thousands of miles away into the mountains of Japan, where villagers once warned travelers about something called the Faceless Bell Ringer. Unlike the Frost Wanderer, you did not have to see this creature to be in danger. You only had to hear its bell. According to an old mountain legend, anyone who hears a small bell among the trees after midnight should never follow it. In 1978, a young photographer named Kenji traveled to an abandoned temple high in the mountains. He wanted to photograph it before winter. Snow made the path impossible to reach. Kenji arrived late in the afternoon. The temple was badly damaged and appeared untouched for years. Near the entrance hung a small metal bell. He took several photographs and decided to sleep in an abandoned building nearby. Around midnight, he woke to a single quiet ring. At first, he thought it came from the temple. A minute later, it sounded again, but this time from deep inside the forest. Kenji looked outside and noticed a small light moving between the trees. Thinking another traveler might be lost, he grabbed his flashlight and followed it. The farther he walked, the farther away the bell seemed to move. Soon, he could no longer see the temple or the building. He stopped. The bell suddenly went silent. Then a voice spoke behind him, asking if he had been looking for someone. Kenji turned and saw a tall figure wearing old clothing. A small bell hung from its hand. Its head was lowered. Kenji asked if it needed help. The figure slowly raised its head. Where its face should have been, there was only smooth, pale skin. Kenji immediately ran. The bell began ringing behind him. At first it sounded far away, but quickly grew closer. He refused to look back, even when the ringing seemed to come from directly beside him. The next morning, villagers found Kenji near the bottom of the mountain. An elderly man recognized his description and called the creature the Faceless Bell Ringer. According to the legend, it leads travelers away from safe paths and deeper into the mountains. Later, Kenji developed his photographs. In one image, a blurred figure stood near the temple, holding something that looked like a bell. The third creature is different because you do not need to enter a forest or climb a mountain to encounter it. Sometimes it comes directly to your home. In parts of Eastern Europe, stories were told about the night guest, a tall man in a dark coat who appeared near houses after 3 a.m. He never broke doors or windows, he simply waited outside. In 2003, a family moved into an old house on the edge of a small town. Everything seemed normal until their daughter told her father that the man near the gate had returned. Her father asked what she meant. She explained that a tall stranger had been standing outside for several nights, always watching the house. The next night, her father woke around 3:20 and looked through the window. A tall man in a long coat stood near the gate. He opened the window and asked what the stranger wanted. The man gave no answer and slowly walked away. The following night he returned, but this time he was inside the yard, even though the gate had been locked. The father switched on the outside light. The stranger looked toward the window with a motionless smile. Then the light briefly went out. When it returned, the yard was empty. On the third night, the family stayed awake. At exactly 3:17, footsteps crossed the yard and stopped at the front door. A calm male voice asked if it could come inside. Nobody answered. The question came again, but the family remained silent. The next morning, the father spoke to an elderly neighbor. She immediately recognized the description. Previous owners had seen the same man, she said. Then she gave him one warning. No matter what it says, and no matter whose voice it uses, never invite it inside. For several nights nothing happened, and the family began to relax. Then one night, the father suddenly woke and looked at the clock. It was exactly 3:17. Soft footsteps moved downstairs. He opened his bedroom door, but the hallway was empty. Then he heard his daughter calling from the first floor. Dad. He almost walked toward the stairs before remembering that her bedroom was across from his. He opened her door and found her sleeping peacefully. Then the voice downstairs spoke again. Dad, can he come inside? The father woke his wife and told everyone to remain upstairs. Footsteps continued moving through the rooms below until around 4 when they stopped near the staircase. After sunrise, the father searched the house. Every door and window was locked. Nobody was inside, but a large handprint had appeared on an old mirror near the entrance. Later, he searched boxes left by previous owners and discovered a photograph taken decades earlier. Another family stood outside the same house. In the background near the gate was a tall figure wearing a long, dark coat. 2 weeks later, the family moved away. New owners later claimed they never experienced anything unusual, yet neighbors sometimes reported seeing a motionless figure beside the gate shortly before dawn. Perhaps these 3 creatures are only legends. The Frost Wanderer may be a hunter's story. The Faceless Bell. Ringer may have been invented to keep travelers on mountain paths, and the night guest may be an old superstition. But similar warnings exist in places thousands of miles apart. Never open the door for something that should not be outside. Never follow a strange sound into the darkness. And if a familiar voice asks permission to enter during the night, make sure the person who owns that voice is not already beside you.